The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
This weak Prime Minister has lost control of the borders, lost control of immigration, lost control of spending, debt and inflation, and now he's lost control of his own cabinet. We've learned in the Globe and Mail today that his finance minister is having her people speak out against him. She wants a large deficit of $40 billion. He, on the other hand, wants an even larger deficit on steroids, bigger than $40 billion. We know that Canadians are going to lose from all this inflation, but which one of those two is going to win?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians lose when the Conservative leader votes against a dental plan for seniors. Canadians lose when he stands against a tax break for all Canadians over the next few months. Canadians lose when he blocks a school food program that's going to save parents $800 on groceries while putting more food in kids' bellies. Every single time the Leader of the Opposition gets up in this House, he stands against supports for Canadians, against growing the economy, against supporting a better future for all Canadians, because he's only in it for himself.
That's right.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, it's not clear that the finance minister is actually in it with him. She said, according to the Globe and Mail, the Prime Minister's office has given internal direction for an aggressive and possibly costly policy agenda that threatens to blow past spending targets she has already publicly stated for the government. She promised the deficit would be capped at $40 billion, acknowledging that if it went over, it would cause even more inflation. That means hungry Canadians lined up at food banks. So once again, will the government meet the minister's promise to keep the deficit under $40 billion?
Yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
While we once again hear the Leader of the Opposition talking down Canada's economy, talking down Canadians, the Bank of Canada, it looks like it's going to be decreasing interest rates once again because inflation is back down within the target range. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition is also perplexed because he doesn't let his own MPs speak out on anything that he doesn't stamp and approve. He has people follow them around with tape recorders so that they don't speak to media about anything that he doesn't pre-approve. That's not being Canadians' voices in this place, Mr. Speaker.
We were doing so very well for the first number of questions in terms of members respecting that only one of their colleagues at a time had the floor. I'll ask members to please withhold their comments and let the one member speak and the one member answer. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has admitted that deficits drive inflation. His minister admitted the same thing. That's why she said the deficit would not go above $40 billion. That was her guardrail. They weren't going to smash into that guardrail. She's like a bus driver saying she's going to come just short of hitting that $40 billion guardrail. And then some crazy lunatic comes in, grabs the steering wheel, and jerks it sharp to the left through the guardrail. Does he realize there's 41 million Canadians that are going to go off the cliff in that bus?
Order. Order. Colleagues, the longer I take to get order in this place, the shorter question period in terms of the number of questions we'll have to ask. I ask for members, please, exercise discipline. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, while the Leader of the Opposition continues to talk down Canadians and the Canadian economy and indeed Canada, let me once again put it on the record. Canada is the best country in the world. And we, as Canadians, are stepping up, got us through the pandemic. Canadians got us through the challenge of high inflation. Canadians will keep building a positive future for themselves by being there and showing up for each other. Unlike the Leader of the Opposition, who's voted against every measure that has been put on the table to support Canadians over the past years and continues to be in it only for himself.
Healthcare for all.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
We know the Prime Minister has lost control of spending, and now we see he's lost control of his own minister. We have a finance minister who won't tell us what the deficit is, and a Prime Minister who doesn't think about monetary policy, and that seems like a match made in heaven. But then again, maybe not. The Globe and Mail reports that, quote, tensions have risen between the Prime Minister's office and the Finance Minister's department, saying that the current dynamic appears to be similar to what happened with Bill Morneau before he quit. The Prime Minister bullies females and he bullies finance ministers, and now he's bullying a female finance minister. How much longer is she going to put up with that?
À l'ordre, s'il vous plaît.
Order, please.
Members to take their seats. The honourable member from Lakeland, I'll ask her, please, to not take the floor unless recognised. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we are united in working for Canada and Canadians.
Colleagues, the chair has stood up for longer than a minute, which would be one question. I'm going to ask members to control themselves. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance from the top, please.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we are united in working hard for Canada and Canadians. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, the only would-be bullies in this House are directly opposite. But I am very comfortable standing up to them. I look forward, together with my colleagues, to tabling the Fall Economic Statement on Monday in this House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. 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 The honourable member. The honourable member for Thornhill.
So awkward. I don't know why the finance minister takes all of this abuse from the Prime Minister. She told Canadians that the deficit wouldn't go past $40 billion. That was her own self-imposed guardrail. Now she says everything's fine as her political career collapses, and so does her credibility, all because of this Prime Minister. 5 senior Liberal veterans and 3 political staffers confirmed to the Globe that the tensions have risen between her office and the PMO over spending. These are the same people who last summer said that she couldn't communicate. We know what the Prime Minister thinks of her, but why does she still have confidence in him?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we are united. And on this side of the House, we recognize what a privilege it is every single day to work hard for Canada and Canadians and to defend the national interest. That is what we are focused on every single day. And I would urge the MPs opposite to remember, this is a challenging time in Canada and the world. It is not a time for cheap partisan games.
The honourable member from Thornhill.
It's the finance minister who said over and over again that she would not go over her self-imposed guardrail of a $40 billion deficit. Now the parliamentary budget officer says that's yet another broken Liberal promise. We have no idea who's in the driver's seat anymore, driving Canadians through that $40 billion guardrail off of a cliff as they pay more in inflationary spending on the backs of struggling Canadians. What we do know is that Canadians ought to take her driver's license away. I can give her another opportunity to prove that she can communicate. She can stand up here and tell us what the deficit is at the moment.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I look forward to tabling the fall economic statement in this House on Monday. And in the fall economic statement, we will show that the government is maintaining its fiscal anchor, specifically reducing the federal debt as a share of the economy over the medium term. In addition, I expect the debt to GDP ratio we projected in the spring budget for fiscal year 23-24 will be met. Canada has the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7, the lowest deficit in the G7. This is good news for Canadians.
Then I have
The honourable member for Bellechasse-les-Échemins-Lévis. Unable to table a single balanced budget in 9 years, unable to keep the promise to keep the deficit under 40 billion, the finance minister is above all unable to convince her leader to abandon inflationary spending. There are major tensions between these two, according to the Globe and Mail. The Prime Minister is losing control of public finances, borders, his caucus, and even his cabinet. Can he do any good and at least tell us how much the deficit exceeds the announced $40 billion? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance. Mr. Speaker, I will be tabling the fall economic statement next Monday in this very House. And in this economic statement, we show that the government maintains its budgetary anchor. More specifically, reducing the federal debt on average in the economy. I expect the debt-GDP ratio that we've forecasted to be respected for 2023-2024. The honourable member for Bellechasse-les-Échemins-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance waits until the eve of the end of the parliamentary session to table her economic update. We've seen more courageous people in this House because bad news awaits. And the Globe and Mail tells us that the Prime Minister wants to radically increase spending and that his Finance Minister is failing to make him see reason. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has said it. The deficit will be much higher than the $40 billion announced. How big is the deficit? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance. Mr. Speaker, I am over the moon that the member across the way quoted the Parliamentary Budget Officer, because it's he and his analysis that concluded, and I quote, that the current budgetary policy is viable and sustainable in the long term. That's what the PBO said, straight from the PBO's mouth, which is objective. That's the truth of the matter, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Bellechasse-les-Échemins-Lévis. Well, the truth is that there's disorder in public finances, tension at the borders, discord in cabinet, dissatisfaction within his caucus. Canadians are tired of this worn-out, inefficient and spendthrift government. Even his finance minister no longer gets along with him, according to the Globe and Mail. It is time for him to ask the real question. There's enough to do work. How high and how big is the deficit? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance. Mr. Speaker, I will be tabling the economic statement next Monday here in this very chamber. And in this fall economic statement, we show that the government will maintain its budgetary anchor. It will reduce its federal debt level in the economy in the medium term. The debt-GDP ratio that we forecasted for 23-24 will be maintained.